I'm joined by CNN legal analyst Sunny Hostin and CNN senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin, along with respected forensic pathologist Cyril Weck, to talk more about today's extraordinary events. Jeffrey, let me start with you. The police union just minutes ago called this all a rush to judgment, suggesting charges came unusually quick in a case of this nature. There were also accusations that politics motivated the decision we heard today. Is it unusual, Jeffrey, for a case like this to already have resulted in charges not even 2 weeks after the death?
Yes, it is unusual. It was surprising to me. I certainly was expecting a longer wait, but that doesn't mean the charges don't have validity. I mean, this was a very quick action by the prosecutor, and I think only when we see these charges tested in court will we know whether there was an inappropriate rush to judgment. Certainly, her statement today was a summary of the evidence she has, but we'll only know when it's tested in court.
Sonny, the driver of the transport van was charged not only with second-degree murder, but manslaughter by vehicle. We assume that the prosecutor is leaning into the idea that Freddie Gray got a so-called rough ride. In Philadelphia, they're called nickel rides. In other cities, they're called joy rides. They're these jerky, violent rides that bang prisoners up. How can that be proved?
You know, I think that you're right. I think when you look at the charges, because she charged not only manslaughter by vehicle, she also charged him with second-degree depraved heart murder, which tells me that she believes that he is one of the worst actors here, because the depraved heart means that he intentionally, willfully, deliberately acted with depraved indifference to human life in his actions. And so I think that she's got to prove, certainly, that there was this rough ride. And the way you prove that is not only through testimony. I suspect she's going to get one or two or perhaps even more of the officers to turn state's evidence and testify against the driver. She can also use a lot of the forensic information garnered from the medical examiner's reports and experts to prove that a rough ride existed.
Cyril, could anything in the autopsy prove that Freddie Gray's injuries were not sustained by the result of his own actions, as some police leaks to the media seem to be suggesting? There seemed to be a suggestion a few days ago in a different media outlet that perhaps he was banging his own head against the van's walls. How could that be proven or disproven?
Well, I've read the statements from the officials. This man had his legs shackled and his hands cuffed, and he was placed in a prone position. Pray tell, how was he running around and banging himself in the van? I've been saying this for 48 hours or more before I even learned about this. This is the most egregious case in modern times that I can think of. From the very beginning, they placed him in a hog-tied position, prone, and brought his hands back behind him. They briefly sat him up, and then they placed him in that position again. When they put him into the van, they placed him again into a full hog-tied position, prone, face down, legs shackled, hands brought. That procedure was banned more than 20 years ago. Where have these officers been? The International Association of Police Chiefs, the Royal Canadian Police Force, every police agency in every metropolitan city has talked about not using the hog-tied position. So now you have him in that position. He's yelling and screaming for help, and his body is inert, and the van is moving. There's the velocity. You asked a moment ago, how will this be proven? Those injuries are not what we call spontaneous pathological fractures. He did not have metastatic carcinoma that had brittled his bones, and he didn't have osteoporosis. These injuries came as that body flopped back and forth, breaking the vertebrae in the neck, and then eventually severing the spinal cord. This is an open and shut case. You'll have no problem, I guarantee you, the prosecution, in finding police expert procedure people around and forensic pathologists to put this together. There is no alternative explanation for how these injuries were sustained and when they were incurred.
Wow. Jay,
Jeff, go ahead.
Can I just say that Cyril, I think, is getting a little ahead of the game here, calling this an open and shut case. These officers may well be convicted. and we will see this in court. But we have not heard their side of the story. We have not heard the explanation for what sort of injuries he may have suffered outside the police van before he got in. So I just think it's worth pausing, recognize how serious these charges are, but to say that this is an open and shut case at this point, I'm certainly not willing to go there, though I defer to the great Cyril Wecht on many things.
Well, no, one comment, if I may make, sir,
Cyril Wecht.
about thank you. When the injuries occurred, but the injuries had not occurred when Mr. Gray was running away. So if the injuries were sustained, they were sustained again by the police in their stopping him. And then you get back to the whole business of why was he stopped and why was it necessary to place him in a prone position. And if they did produce injuries, and they well may have, it would have been because they were compressing and they were leaning into his back, producing quite possibly the initial fractures of a linear, non-displaced nature, which were then significantly aggravated by that inert body flopping around in the van.
All right, gentlemen, we'll continue this conversation in my chambers.